Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome all back to Dominant Mets Nation. And today we have the news that most of us Mets fans have been yearning for the last couple months. We got Juan Soto, we brought back Sean Manaea, and we made some pretty nice moves this offseason. But at the end of the day, addressing that front and starting pitcher position was at utmost importance. And in the latest report, you hear from John Heyman and Pat Ragazzo that the Mets are interested in the Padres co-aces Dylan Cease and Michael King. Wow, wow. All right, folks. So we're going to discuss that because you know what? That, according to a lot of folks, has been holding the New York Mets back from having that great offseason. Because you know what? Yes, they've made good moves, but the moves that they've made by getting Juan Soto, investing all that money, really kind of tells you that the time is now. Francisco Lindor in his prime. Obviously, Nimmo in his prime. Diaz in his prime. And why do I mention these guys? Well, these guys are part of your core, but they are also guys who are going to the tail end of their prime. So you have to really utilize and take advantage of that right now. Juan Soto speeds up the process. And the Mets, really, what I like from the Mets is they've shown a propensity to be interested in upper echelon talent. Okay? So, but that tells you that they identify what their needs are. All right, folks, before we really get into this video and before we get started, as always, let me thank you first and foremost for helping this channel grow and supporting the channel. Continue to smash that like button if you are a brand new subscriber. And if you haven't subscribed yet, consider hitting that subscribe button. Join us. I really appreciate it in advance and grow with us. Thank you so much. All right, so what do I mean? The Mets hitters. We know that we need hitters. Obviously, the Mets were interested in Teoscar Hernandez, Jock Peterson. They've called on Vladimir Guerrero. Obviously, they're in hot pursuit of Pete Alonso, and we have Pete Alonso news as well later in the video. So the Mets are dipping their toe and exploring every corner of the market, and that's what you like to see. And then starting pitcher market, the Mets have done that as well. When the offseason opened, you heard the Mets were interested in Garrett Crochet. He ended up going to the Red Sox. The trade package with the Red Sox was more appealing. But right now, according to sources, the Padres actually highly value the Mets prospects. And folks, how good is that to hear? Because a lot of times, a specific team or ball club, they tend to value prospects differently. I remember a couple years ago when David Robertson was traded to the Phillies years ago, and Mets fans were complaining. Well, we had superior prospects that were offered. It doesn't really matter. You can have higher ranked prospects, but if the team values other teams' prospects better or more, you're out of luck. So, John Heyman reports that the Padres are specifically interested in guys like Acuna, in guys like Sproat. And that's a conversation we have to talk about in a few minutes because that is questionable. I've come up with a couple trade packages and assigned values. And I want to go over that with you. What you would do, what you would not do. But that's a very important question. But the Padres are interested in a couple different packages. All right, so we will go over that as well. And also, Dylan Cease versus Michael King. In my opinion, there is a clear-cut favorite. I want to know, who is your favorite? Why would you rather trade for this particular guy? Who's in the market for these guys? You hear the Braves. The Braves are right now jockeying position for either Michael King or Dylan Cease. And you hear the Cubs. But again, it seems like the Padres value the Mets farm system a little bit better, which is good to hear. And here's the thing, folks. And if you really analyze the situation right now, I love to hear that the Mets are currently sniffing around these starting pitchers that could be frontline starters because we desperately need that. Sean Manaea, Kodai Senga, nice. It's nice to have at the top of rotation, but there is so much uncertainty. Kodai Senga pitching all of 5 innings. We love the guy. We love the guy. But still, he has to show a propensity to stay healthy. And even so, how much could you rely on Kodai? Even if he's 100% healthy, how much could you realistically rely on him since he only pitched 5 innings? These guys have to build themselves up so that they don't run into arm trouble. And then also, by the time you get to the postseason, this run, going to a tough, tumultuous season, a guy like Kodai Senga could potentially be gassed. So David Stearns and Steve Cohen really have to check up all the boxes right now. And if the Padres, because of what's going on in this situation, and they are looking to cut bait with a couple of these players, they're in the last year of their contracts, being Cease, being King. You know what? The Mets have to be opportunistic. Dylan Cease was rumored to be available 2 months ago, but the Padres still, I think, were very up in the air on what direction they were going to go in. Was Sasaki potentially going to pick them? Were a couple other players, were they able to maneuver and possibly go for it? I think the Padres, yes, they're going to have pedal to the metal, but I think they're a team that's going to play it like the Rays. They're going to flip these players who are in their last years to reset, to get players that have many years left on arbitration left. So, I think right now the Mets run into a situation where they can use money as leverage. The Padres have been looking to cut payroll. So that just gives the Mets a little more, more of an edge, more of the ability to be creative. Now, Michael King, Dylan Cease, you could say that those two guys are, pretty much even. Dylan Cease last year doing very, very well, 14-11 win-loss record, 3.47 ERA. He's pitched in 190 innings. He was 4th in the Cy Young Award winning, 22. He was number 22 in the MVP voting. So last year, very solid year from Cease. Very solid year, coming off of a year before that when he was 7-9 with a 4.58. That being with the White Sox. Michael King, ultra impressive last year. Michael King had his first full year last year. Traditionally, when he was with the Yankees, he mostly came out of the bullpen. At the tail end of 2023, he had a few starts in which he looked very, very dominant. So that his trade value was elevated tremendously. He finished off 2023 as a 4-8 win-loss record, 2.75 ERA, pitched a little over 100 innings. 2024, his first full season at age 29, 2.95 ERA, went 13-9, 173 innings pitched, and he finished 7th in the Cy Young Award winning. Now, who cost more? Michael King was in an arbitration battle with the Padres, and Michael King wanted about $8.5 million, and the Padres wanted to pay him about $7.2 million. And that really shows you a guy, literally, this guy, his rightful salary is close to $30 million. And here you have the Padres quibbling over $1.5 million. Either way, if they pay him $8 million, $7.5 or $9 million, you are getting this guy for a freaking steal. So it looks like they're going to settle in the middle, probably at about $7.9 million. Dylan Cease is making a little more. It looks like his arbitration battle got him at 13.4. So in terms of getting rid of sheer value, if the Padres are looking to shed money, which it appears like they are, Cease would eliminate more money from the payroll. more money from the payroll. So, but still, which player is viewed as more talented? Which player would command a higher return? If you go to baseball trade values, both players obviously have 1 year left on their contract, so they are essentially rentals. So you really want to be careful in that situation. Although you view them as a top line starters, front line starters, you want to really kind of protect yourself long term. And this is where I think a guy like David Stearns is perfect to execute a trade. I don't really see him. This is where we're going to get into Sprout. For each of these guys, and they actually had a featured trade on baseball trade values. This is the one that the site proposed. I believe it was Acuna and Sprout straight up for Dylan Cease. And the values, according to baseball trade values, would match up. I think Cease has a value of about 34, and Acuna and Sproat together give you a value of 34. So according to baseball trade values, that would go through. So would you do a trade for Cease, Acuna, and Sproat? Would you do that trade? That was proposed by baseball trade values. My opinion is I would say hell no to that trade. Hell no to a Dylan Cease for Acuna and for Sproat. First of all, if I'm doing it straight up for Sproat, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it because you're talking about a 6-year potential of Sproat. I mean, that is a great trade for, in my opinion, that's a great trade for the Padres because if you're evaluated and you like Sproat, it's obviously 1 year of 1 year of Cease, 1 year of King versus 6 years of Sproat. It's not even close. Not even close. The only, here's the deal. If Sproat is put in one of these deals, here's my thinking of it. David Stearns and his evaluators and his front office know and feel that there's a high probability that Sproat is not the real deal. That is where right now you can take advantage of his high value. Because I got to say, a lot of these prospects that I've combed over, a Gilbert, a Jet Williams, a Ronnie Mauricio, a Brett Beatty, they're coming off values where their prospect value have gone down. Even a Ryan Clifford, their values have gone down. On the even Blade Tidwell. So, that is another reason why you want to bring these guys up to the majors to show that they have something. In that trade where you put Sproat and Acuna, both those guys' values are at their highest. So would I want to use those two chips to get a Cease? I think it's too much. I think it's too rich. Acuna, I see a lot there. And Sproat, I see a lot there. According to baseball trade values, Michael King wouldn't be as expensive. He wouldn't be as expensive as a Dylan Cease. But here's the thing. I think Michael King is better. I think that's a guy who doesn't have a lot of miles on the arm. Most of his career, he was a reliever. He just had one full season at age 29. That's a guy that if I trade, I'd feel comfortable giving him a 5 or 6 year contract. You trade for him, give him a 5-year contract. 29 years old. I like that. I really like that, especially if you in the market for Luis Castillo. Luis Castillo signed for 3, maybe 4 years. So that essentially would be the same situation, except a guy like Michael King, I think, is just hitting his stride and hasn't even hit his ceiling. Really hasn't hit his ceiling. And I'm gonna just bring up a couple baseball savant things that really stood out to me about King. And the Jim Duquette package that he had, I believe he had McGill. So I believe it was Duquette. I believe it was him. Could be wrong. He had something like Gilbert, Tidwell, and McGill for Michael King. So Drew Gilbert, Blade Tidwell, and McGill. And McGill, I gotta say, he's got pretty decent value. A guy who has shown a little bit of progression, a little bit, I'd say in the last couple starts last year, he has shown growth. He has shown growth, and he has potential. A guy who could throw in the mid 90s, who's got a pretty good pitch mix, good experience, has a couple years left before he becomes a free agent. You're not going to have to pay him a whole lot of money. He's got that major league experience. He is pretty attractive on the market right now. He really is. So you might be trading McGill at his all-time high right now. Watch McGill turn into like something really special. But, that's a guy that, you could really capitalize. A Gilbert, like I said, his value is a little low. But if you could put that package together, a Gilbert, a Tidwell, and a McGill, that I might have to consider. I really might have to consider. There have been other variations of that trade where I saw Gilbert, McGill, and Budo. So you essentially take out Tidwell, but you put Budo in there. Budo is a guy like, Tidwell is a guy who he has potential, but he hasn't played on the major league level. Budo has shown himself to be a very, very reliable bullpen arm. And if you look, the other day, I was saying our bullpen is rounding out really, really nice. Really, really nice. And I just want to mention, before we sign Ryan Stanek, another thing that I like to see, the Mets keep knocking the door at the top of the market. They literally inquired. We know about Tanner Scott. Didn't work out. He went to the Dodgers, the big bad Dodgers, but they also kicked the tires on Kenley Jansen. They saw what would it take to get him in the fold, and Jansen basically indicated that he wants to shoot for 500 saves. And he wouldn't have that opportunity here with the Mets, obviously because of Edwin Diaz, but I still like the fact that the Mets are kicking the tires and exploring the best of the best options and seeing if there fits their particular situation. But right now with their bullpen, do you want to risk messing this up? You have Edwin Diaz, AJ Minter, Daniel Nunez. I like that. A guy who can, close, a guy 8th inning guy, 9th inning guy. Jose Budo, Ryan Stanek, Reed Garrett, Sean Reed Foley, and potentially somebody else. I mean, Danny Young's a guy who's there right now, but, you've heard them potentially adding a Tim Hill. I really like that bullpen. I said that they have potential. They are approaching top 5. One of these, I'll say subscribers who he doesn't really watch the videos, but he said I quoted the Mets as being the best bullpen in all of baseball. Never said that. I'm a guy who I like to see the players play, but I think they are approaching potentially being a top 5 bullpen. I really think that they have improved tremendously. And Jose Budo has been a very big piece, but also too, is he a piece that, these bullpen guys, they're up and down. Is he a guy that you're trading off a high? Like that's it. You want to trade when these guys are at their high point, not at their low point. So maybe that could be a point where Stern says, "Hey, you know what? Let's trade him away. His value is up. Let's move him." I don't know. Okay, so that's the situation with a Michael King. I would heavily consider doing a Gilbert, a Tidwell, and a McGill. Stearns may not, because that's giving up an awful lot of starting pitching for a starting pitcher of only 1 year. So he may not. But I think you definitely have to give up a top prospect. Gilbert's your top prospect. Maybe McGill, and maybe another, maybe top 20 prospect, not another top 20 prospect, but definitely, I wouldn't go crazy. I wouldn't do the Sprouts. I wouldn't do the Jonah Tongs. The only way, and here's the caveat, and I know I'm hedging my bets. I'm being like Andy Martino, but the only way I do a Sprout is if I and my internal guys believe that Sprout has a really good chance not to be the real deal, right? I'm looking at it like he's a top 3 prospect in all of baseball right now, and he has really risen up the charts. He really has in the last year. So when I see that, and when I hear Mets evaluators, they're projecting him as a number 2 or an ace, So a top end starter. If the Mets truly don't believe that's the case, if they don't truly believe that's the case, then you capitalize on his value. But then also you look at opportunity loss. If Sprout isn't that guy that you perceive, would you rather put him in a Vladdy Guerrero trade? Does that have more value to you? So then you would have to evaluate on those type of parameters. But folks, you got to be happy. You got to be happy right now. I told you, trust in Stearns. Were there moments I was upset? I mean, still, Alonso's not signed. We're going to get to him in a couple seconds, but it's not necessarily the Mets' fault that the guy has said no umpteen times for a contract. As long as the Mets are trying and giving it their all, and like I said, the guys that they have gone after have been all top echelon guys. Obviously, they got the best guy in the market in Mr. Juan Soto. They've gone after Guerrero, Crochet. Obviously, right now they're pursuing Dylan Cease and Michael King. You really got to like it. The bullpen, they went after the top guys there. Tanner Scott, Kenley Jansen. They came away with AJ Minter. And that's what I like. If you look at the beginning of this season, offseason, what did the Mets need to do? Obviously, they needed a top-end frontline starter. Haven't got one yet, but the offseason's not over. But they did re-sign Sean Manaea, who has that front-end capability. Clay Holmes, they got a little creative outside the box. Maybe you got a solid 2, solid 3 there. The guy has been very successful out of the bullpen. Yes, he's had his moments, but you know what? He might thrive as a starter. Maybe he turns into that Michael King coming out of the bullpen and really elevating his game. I like to take chances. Mr. Juan Soto, best MLB free agent on the market. Add him to your offense. It looks like Pete Alonso will eventually be in the fold. And then on the relievers, we upgraded tremendously in the bullpen, in my opinion. So the Mets are going in a direction. They're just going at their pace, folks. Their pace. That being said, if you haven't got a chance to like the video, please like, subscribe. I really appreciate all the comments. So again, drop a comment as well. Let me know what your take is on what your take is on King, what your take is on Dylan Cease. Who would you prefer? And if you have a potential trade package, let me know, because there are some trade packages I wouldn't even want to consider, but then there's some I'm on the fence. And then there are some that are conditional trade package that, if my scouts feel this way, then I consider it. Sprout, I'm very, very on the fence at. Even I'm thinking through the process, and I'm like, okay, even if the Mets don't think he has the potential to be an ace, maybe you might want to trade him for a player that has more than 1 year left on their contract. So, that's that situation. Okay, so my answer to the Michael King, Dylan Cease thing is I'd rather have a Michael King as well. And the thing that I also wanted to get you some of the Michael King stats. Like Michael King, I just want to be clear, he doesn't throw as hard as a Dylan Cease. Michael King's average fastball velo is 93.3. He's a different pitcher. He's a really different pitcher. His expected ERA last year was 3.59. So, I mean, those are numbers that, maybe some would say this is why I want Cease. His fastball velo is not as high as Cease. He doesn't have that extra velocity. Expected ERA is 3.59. His actual ERA was 2.95. So that might indicate that maybe he had a little bit of luck. Expected batting average, 67th percentile. So, it's a little better than 50%. So 17 points better than league average. Expected average velocity. This is what I like, folks. Batters do not hit the ball harder of this guy. He is in the 99th percentile in average exit velocity. 85.7 miles per hour is the average exit velocity, which is phenomenally good. 99th percentile. They don't hit the ball harder of this guy. Chase rate, 70th percentile. Whiff rate, 78th percentile. K rate, 81st percentile. Walk rate, 39th percentile. That could get better. Barrel percentage 79th, hard hit percentage 97th, ground ball percentage 46, extension 20th percentile. His stuff, he has got a sinker, a changeup, a four seam, a sweeper, a slider. And we have seen players with this type of pitch mix kind of almost reminds me of a Sean Manaea. Sinker, he used the most. Sinker is the pitch that Sean Manaea used very heavily in 2024. Also, the sweeper. The sweeper is another pitch that King uses a lot. He's got a changeup, a four-seamer. His four-seamer, his fastball, Michael King's fastball, he uses that the third most. So his sinker and his changeup are his top two pitches. So, he's a very interesting guy, very interesting guy. And over the course of his career, his sinker, was used a lot less. Like if you look at his pitch mix, he used to predominantly use his sinker almost 66% of the time. Then his curveball 20%. Now he doesn't even use a curveball. Like this guy has evolved tremendously throughout the course of his career. He really has. He really has. And in my opinion, he should cost you a little less than a Dylan Cease. Really should cost you a little less than a Dylan Cease. Dylan Cease, he's a nice pitcher as well. He really is a nice pitcher. If they went in that direction, I wouldn't be happy. Dylan Cease's average fastball velocity, as opposed to 93, a little over 93, Dylan Cease's fastball velocity is 97 miles per hour. So, he can pump it up there. He really can. His expected ERA was in the 79th percentile, 3.31. So, he had some stats that were nice. The whiff percentage, 92nd percentile, K percentage, 89th percentile, chase rate, 70th percentile. Needed help in the walk rate too as well. His walk rate was only 41 percentile. His pitch mix is a little different. He presents a four-seam fastball, throws that 44% of the time, a slider, a curve, a sweeper, a changeup, and a cutter. I think with the pitching lab, a guy like Michael King profiles perfectly. He's the perfect candidate to thrive in the pitching lab situation with the New York Mets. So that is a guy I would target. If they went the Dylan Cease route, I wouldn't complain. I wouldn't complain. Obviously not. Very good a pitcher as well, but I think Michael King fits the New York Mets situation so much better. What do you think? I need your help. Let me know. Let me know. All right, now let's get into some Pete Alonso real quick. And I have some more stuff later on in the video, so stick around. But I couldn't really not talk about this story, the update, the twist to the Pete Alonso saga. And thank you all, and I appreciate the last month and a half. Like we've had so many different videos, and you sticking around. It really does. It really means a lot. It really does. And I cannot wait to have resolution for all of us where Pete Alonso ends up signing. And I would say there's more than a 90% chance, based on logic, that he comes back to our New York Mets. But a story was sent to me today, and I'm just bringing it up. I have to. Where it is. Okay. All right. So this story really highlighted the stubbornness. Like, there were a lot of adjectives associated with the polar bear. Is he greedy? Is he selfish? And I initiated some of those adjectives. But you know what? You ask questions when the situations are a little different. Everything just seems so bizarre with Scott Boras, Pete Alonso. You heard stuff about the Prince Fielder contract. That was the comp. Like, there were just so many bizarre things around this offseason. Then you heard at Christmas that the Mets offered a 3-year, $90 million contract. And you're like, oh my God, that's perfect. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, now they're willing to accept the 3-year contract. Mets fans are, oh, yeah, we already submitted that. We already offered them that. It's going to be no big deal. All right, it was a big deal. All right, so the story that came out today is, the Pete Alonso saga has taken over the New York Mets' entire offseason. And that's an understatement. This Pete Alonso saga, love Pete, hate Pete, this has monopolized the entire offseason. I don't like that. I personally do not like that. It's not about one guy. It's about the team. This guy could be the best player in all of baseball. It's still about the team. And then again, Amazing's Day. What is that supposed to be about? That's supposed to be about fan engagement. It's supposed to be about, the players. having a great time. The fans having a great time, seeing their favorite players, talking to the owner, the manager. It's supposed to be a great day. But what was the story of the day? The focus. It ended up being about Pete Alonso. Steve Cohen's comments really sucked up the energy and the story of the day. At the end of the day, yes, there were people saying Mason's day was great. This is nice. This is nice. But you couldn't ignore the big story of the day where Steve Cohen, our owner, our leader, got very candid and honest. And you might not like what he says. You might not like that he's a billionaire. You might not like that he's making a hardline stance, but he was speaking from the heart. And you talk about hardline stance. No other team, no other baseball team is offering this guy more money. I'm pretty sure if Pete Alonso's market was higher, Steve Cohen and David Stern, if they truly value the guy, would step up. They wouldn't be dragging this out. The Mets are like, here, take the money. We're paying you over market value. What's going on? But Pete and Scott Boras, want to be apparently a little difficult. And that thing that you heard about that opt out, and if Pete Alonso opt out, he would get an extra $5 million or $10 million or however they designated that number. That's ridiculous. That is really ridiculous. And it really kind of makes the Mets feel like they're being used. Like, okay, he's got a qualifying offer attached to him this year. This year, now we'll give him a 3-year contract with an opt out, give him money to opt out. He'll shed that qualifying offer and go elsewhere. That's why the Mets, I think were so perturbed. It really seemed like the guy didn't want to be here. It really didn't. Okay, so after 6 seasons in Queens, Alonso was hoping to strike it rich in this free agency. He really was. Unfortunately, the Mets are not willing to pay him that premium amount. They're really not. As far as we know, the best offer that the Mets have made is in the range of that 3-year, $70 million. He obviously turned that down, and he went to test the market again. Like, we all know this. Okay, so this is where the news kind of comes in today that I saw from the good, very great reporter, Fox Sports reporter, Disha Thozar. She believes that the time is coming soon, and that Thozar, and this when I saw this, I was actually surprised that she had this type of access, like really in terms of that advice. She gives him advice. She goes, Thozar recently urged Alonso to rejoin the Mets, overcoming any hard feelings he might have with Cohen or the front office. So this is a quote. Alonso might have sour grapes with Cohen and the Mets for offering a contract that's less than what he expected or believes he deserved. Thosar wrote, it's understandable. If Alonso is upset with teams, particularly the Mets, for failing to recognize and appreciate his value the way he does. But at this point, he has to move on and accept that his market is what it is. And he can't change it this winter. It's time for Alonso to accept that his destiny is calling him back to Queens. Alonso, just for reference, sits 26 home runs shy of the all-time franchise home run record of 252, held by Mr. Darryl Strawberry. So I think, that is, a pretty honest take by Disha right now. Right now, the market, and this is what I've been saying the last month, the market has spoken. The market has spoken. Every team has given their take. Most teams have chosen to go elsewhere on the first base, on their first base answer. But right now, are we just talking about sour grapes? Is Pete Alonso just upset right now because he feels he's being so much more undervalued? And then another story that kind of really supports this story is you hear Brandon Nimmo apparently a year ago when Pete Alonso had his longtime agent for almost 5 years said, hey, Pete, look, Scott Boras got me 8 years, $160 million. I think it's a good idea for you to switch over. And then the Pete Alonso looked at his situation and said, yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. So, going back, there have been so many things going back and then the Mets offered him that contract, 7 years, $158 million. There's so many regrettable decisions Pete Alonso has made that has made this so tough to come to terms with. That's the thing. Reality is tough to come to terms with, especially when you make so many wrong moves. But here's the deal. If he secures a contract of 3 years, $75 million, right? He was supposed to get 7 years, 160. Would he like to get a lot more? Yes. But now he's at risk of losing a lot. So if he gets that 3 years, $75 million, he'll be 32, 33 at the end of the contract. 160 minus 75 million, 60 plus 25, quick math here. So that means he would need to make up about 85 million, but you minus like the last year, because the last year it really was a 6-year deal. So minus 25. So it's about 135 million. So 75 minus 135. So it's about $60 million that he would have to make up at the end of this contract. So if he signs a 3-year, $75 million, the next contract would have to be a 3-year, $60 million contract to make the polar bear whole. And I think that's pretty viable. If he really puts up and shuts up and he feels he deserves a 7-8 year deal, the next 3 years should be cake. Go put up and shut up like Christian Walker. In 3 years, you'll be younger than Christian Walker. And if you produce in these next 3 years like you expect to, the market will be better than that Christian Walker 3-year, 20 million a clip for 60 million. It seems like he's on pace to reach that mark that he turned down initially. But, obviously there's a lot of risk. If Pete Alonso is not confident, and that's where I'm a little questionable. You're upset that the market, the teams aren't confident in your abilities and that they don't value as how you value yourself, but then you don't show confidence in yourself. If you were extremely confident in yourself, you would say, all right, you know what? Give me that 3-year deal with a 1-year opt-out. I'm going to have a magical year, show you what I'm all about, batting after Juan Soto in the lineup, and I'm going to have a mega year, and you're going to pay me next year. But I feel that Pete Alonso's showing that hesitation. He's showing that lack of confidence. And that's what I think is holding this whole thing up. I think he really thinks he deserves to be paid for past performance. And teams right now aren't doing that like they have been in the past. All right, folks. So those are my comments on that. Again, on today's news, we see Max Scherzer going to the Toronto Blue Jays. As predicted, I said if the Mets were to get him, he would be looking in that $12 to $15 million range. And lo and behold, he signed at $15 million. I gotta say, a lot of these predicted contracts, Sean Manaea, Dominant Mets Nation, we got that right on the money. 3 years, $75 million, right on the money. I said Pete Alonso would be valued at between $22 and $27 million a year, despite all these crazy figures. And it seemed like he might get that $25 million figure, which would be right dead set where we valued him at. So I got to say, we've been pretty good at the predictions and the values. Also, if the Mets end up getting these frontline starters, the thing that I have to end off this video is preaching the patience. He's going to go at his own pace. That being Stearns, I think in the last couple of days, Cohen and Stearns have been extra motivated. There has been some fan frustration out there. I just don't think it's been warranted. It really hasn't. David Stearns is said to be that small market guy, but his first full year, he showed great, massive success and growth coming off of a 2023 dumpster fire. So it's not like, he took over a team that was really, really good. He took over a team that failed in the worst way, and he turned it into a team that went 2 games short of the World Series, and he didn't have any major offseason acquisitions in 2024. So, that's what I like. I want to see growth in 2025 as well. And let's see. We haven't seen him work the trade market. If he starts working the trade market, let's see how he pulls off this deal. And again, with the Padres, I like seeing the Padres dealing with the Mets because, the Padres, they've identified that they like the Mets prospects. Number 2, the Padres are a team, they love to wheel and deal. When you hear the Padres are interested in your prospects, there is more than likely a good chance a deal will get done because that's usually the hiccup that we said in the beginning of the video. that if the team doesn't value your prospects, you could have 10 top 100 prospects. If the team that's trading with you doesn't value them as top 10 and they don't value them as having a future, you're done. You're done. But it seems like in this particular situation, just like last year, the Padres specifically valued what the Yankees had to offer in the Juan Soto package, thus making them the favorites. And again, this year, it looks like the Mets are the favorites to land one of them. When you hear the Braves being involved, I'm not really worried about them. I don't think their farm system is anything to write home about, at least compared to the Mets. The Cubs may have a higher or better farm system ranking-wise, but like I said, the Mets have that advantage that the Padres like their players. So, all right, I think I covered most of the news. Also, all the things I wanted to mention. I mean, the good things about the teams that were interested in acquiring starting pitching in the beginning of the year, you had the Boston Red Sox, but I think now they'd be less likely to be competitive because they traded for obviously Crochet, signed Walker Buehler. You had the Toronto Blue Jays. Not that they could put a superior trade package together, but they just signed a guy like Max Scherzer. I mean, the thought process with the Padres right now is they could potentially trade away a Cease and then sign a Jack Flaherty for a 3 or 4 year term at not a lot of money. So that could be a situation. And again, I'd be looking to get very creative with the Padres. I'd be very surprised if the only player coming back to the New York Mets would be one of those pitchers. I think that the Padres might be trying to shed some payroll, or the Padres might be interested in some of our, I wouldn't say exterior players, but some of our players that present value to them and not as much to us. Who is that? Maybe a McNeil, maybe Starling Marte. Maybe some of these guys on the roster that aren't guys that we essentially need. I mean, like if you get a McNeil off the roster, I mean, like we have plenty of young guys in the minor leagues that I like to see. Obviously, Mauricio, obviously Acuna, obviously Beatty. I mean, that's not to say you might have to include some of those guys in the trade, but I think David Stearns, I have confidence that he knows what he's doing and he knows he has a plan. Like team building, I will say this. I will say team building takes time and it takes patience. When you try to skip steps, and the Mets certainly tried to skip steps in 2022 when they had that really great team and it fell apart, fell to hell in 2023. You got to build it the right way. You certainly got to build it the right way, and that takes time. And David Stearns has only been president of the New York Mets for 16 going on 17 months. Not a lot of time, and we haven't even got to his second year of play. You haven't even got it. His offseason, second year's offseason is not even over. So there is still a lot of time. We got to preach patience. The Mets, if you ask most MLB experts, analysts, the Mets are a top 5 team in all of baseball right now. I think us Mets fans right now have gotten the Yankee complex. We're in the same town with them so long. Now that we have Steve Cohen out as our owner, we think that we need to be the number 1 team in baseball. Look, you don't go from being like a bottom feeder. I'm trying to be as nice as possible under the Wilpons. Like we were fighting, to win 80 games every year, fighting to win every game, 80 games. A 500 year was a good year. A 500 year was a good year. I mean, the amount of times we made the playoffs under the Wilpons is pathetic. Pathetic. I mean, think about it, folks. We've only made the playoffs a handful of times before Cohen. Cohen regime, 4 years, 2 times making the playoffs. Not great, but you know what? We made the playoffs a handful of times. You have to go back. I mean, we made the playoffs, I believe, 2016, 2015, 2006. 2000. I mean, like it's like you really got to go back literally decades in between playoff appearances. It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. All right, so folks, we are building something special here, and it looks like our latest interest is in a frontline starter. What do you think about that? I think that we are going in the direction that we need to be going in. We definitely do need to bolster that front end. Especially if a guy like Sproat isn't going to contribute this year. I would highly want to keep a Sproat no matter what. I like to build a package around around a Drew Gilbert, you could say a Jet Williams, but I like to hold Jet Williams back for possibly a Vladdy Guerrero trade or a Ryan Clifford for a Vladdy Guerrero trade. I want to have our moves stacked. I want to stack moves. And I think that's what David Stearns has right now. He has move A, move B, move C, move D. And that's why they are so patient with Alonso. They're not patient with Alonso because there's nothing else there. They're patient with Alonso and they're steady with Alonso because they have many other viable options. All right, folks, thank you as always. It looks like we've come to the end of the show. I appreciate you. Hit that like button if you didn't get a chance. If you're new and you've been here this long, please, you got to subscribe. We'd love to have you. Thank you as always, and have yourself a great day. And we will get you the latest updates, very, very soon.